Hi, this is Lisa with Holland Designs Crochet. Today I'm going to demonstrate for you how to work the rows of a two-tone chevron style granny blanket. Basically, this is going to be done in two colors, and one color will basically be dominant on one side of the blanket and the other color will be dominant on the opposite side, and the contrasting color will then show through. So I'm going to attempt to design this blanket. It's a custom design request. Someone contacted me and said that they had a pattern like this years ago, maybe 30 or 40 years ago, they had made, but they've lost the pattern and they don't recall the instructions, and they could not find it when they searched online. I also looked myself, could not find it. So I'm doing my best to attempt to design something very similar. So I've begun my row here with a foundation loop. I did chain 3 and double crochet in the third chain from the hook. I like to start sometimes blankets with foundation loops. It makes it easier. You don't have to count chains. You don't have to, worry about spacing when you're working back. So from there, I'm going to do chain 4. And again, double crochet in the third chain from my hook. And that creates another foundation loop that I'll be working into. So the spacing for this foundation row is beginning with a large loop, then we have a chain in between, and then again another loop. So we're going to just continue and do chain 4, double crochet in third chain from hook, and repeat that until we have the correct number of loops that we need. Now for this pattern, I've given the math in the actual written instructions. You need to begin with a foundation row of loops that is a multiple of 7 plus 2 additional loops. So for my demonstration here, I'm going to do a total of 16 foundation loops. So I'll finish that and I'll come back and show you how we continue after we've done the foundation row. All right, I've completed my foundation row of loops. I have 16 loops. Again, the math for the pattern is a multiple of 7 plus 2. So I had 14 plus 2 for a total of 16. So as I'm going to begin now, row 1 of the blanket after the foundation has been finished. This is, I'm just going to call this the main color. So you have MC for main color, CC for contrasting color. So what we're going to do is, to begin the first row of the main color, I'm going to do a chain 2, a double crochet into the first loop, chain 1. So I've got just a chain 2 and a double crochet in the first loop, chain 1, then I'm going to do 3 double crochets in the next loop, and chain 1, and then I'm going to repeat what is in the parentheses, which is the 3 double crochets and chain 1 3 times total. So I've already got my first one done. I'm going to do a second one. So again, 3 double crochets in the next loop, chain 1, and this will be my third repetition of 3 double crochets, and chain 1. Okay, then in the next loop we're going to be working a shell, which in this pattern is defined as 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets all in the same space or the same loop. So we'll be doing a shell here. This is what's going to create the upward point of the chevron. So we have 3 double crochets, a chain 2, and then 3 more double crochets back into the same loop to complete that shell. From there we do a chain 1, and then we're going to again repeat 3 double crochets in the next loop, chain 1, and do that twice. So that's 3 double crochets, chain 1. We'll do that one more time for our 2 repetitions. Okay, so we've done that. You can see what this is starting to look like. The next part is a 3 double crochet together, and we're doing that in the next loop. We're going to be doing that actually twice, so we're doing it in 2 loops. So the first one is a 3 double crochet together, and then we're going to do the same thing in the next stitch, and that is again a 3 double crochet together, which I'll just tell you what it is exactly. Yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Repeat that 2 more times in the same place. Yarn over, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. One more time. So you have your 3 double crochets there, and then to make them together, you yarn over and pull through all the loops on your hook. So you've got the completed 3 double crochet together. This is what's going to create the downward point of your chevron. So after we finish that, we're going to again do chain 1 and then repeat the 3 double crochets in the next loop and chain 1 between that, and we'll do that 2 times. So that's our first repetition of 3 double crochets, chain 1, and the second one in the next loop. And chain 1. You see that how it's kinking up neatly. Okay, from here in the pattern we are told again to work a shell in the next loop. So remember our shell was 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets all in the same loop, again creating the upward point of the chevron. So this is similar to perhaps other granny chevron style blankets you might find, patterns you might find online. Difference with this one so far being the foundation row of loops, just making it easier to know where to place your stitches, not having to count chains. So again, after we've done the shell, we do a chain 1 and then 3 double crochet in the next loop, chain 1 between, and do that twice. So we'll just do those 2. That was our first one, and our second one. Okay, so in the pattern there's parentheses and brackets for repetitions. You always are going to work what's in the parentheses first and what's in the brackets second. It's basically a nested repetition. So in the pattern, after we've gotten this far, you'll come to a bracket and it'll say repeat between the brackets across your entire row. So we would go back to where the start of the bracket began earlier in the pattern repetitions with a 3 double crochet together. We would be doing the downward point here if I was going to continue this to make it longer. But because I'm already at the end here, so it does say repeat between the brackets until you get to the last 2 loops. So I'm already at my last 2 loops. And we're going to end this with 3 double crochets in the next loop, chain 1, and then 2 double crochets in the last. I just need to do my next chain after that last 3 double crochets that I had done there. So we're going to be doing, to end the row, 3 double crochets in the next loop, chain 1, and 2 double crochets in the last loop. At the end of row 1, I did my chain 1. I'm just going to turn my work now. And now we go on to row 2, main color. So I'm still working with this main color. And the instructions say 2 double crochets in the next chain 1 space. So we're going to be working 2 double crochets in that chain 1 space. Then we do a chain 1, and then we work 3 double crochets in the next chain 1 space, and chain 1 after that. we'll repeat that 3 times. So I've got my 3 double crochets, chain 1, and I'll do that 2 more times as I'm working up toward the shell. Okay, and then the last time, 3 double crochets here. And my chain 1. So that's the beginning of row 2 of the main color. Then we are again doing a shell in the next chain 2 space at the top of that shell. So again, the shell is the same. It's the 3 double crochets, a chain 2, and 3 double crochets in the same space there. So that again gives us that upward point on this chevron blanket. Okay, now from here, we again do a chain 1, and then repeat again 3 double crochets in the next chain 1 space, and a chain 1 after that. Do that twice. So this is my second one here. 3 double crochets in the next chain 1 space, and then chain 1. All right, and then from there we are told again to work what is termed an inverted shell, and that's defined as the 3 double crochet together in the next chain 1 space, and then we do that twice. So we do again in the next chain 1 space 3 double crochets together, and that is then termed a inverted shell. So again, that's the decrease that's creating that downward point. And then after that, we again do a chain 1 and 3 double crochets in the next chain 1 space, and a chain 1 between, and work that twice as we work upward again toward the next shell. Again, we're going to be doing the shell in the chain 2 space there at the top. So again, the shell was the 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets in the same space. Followed by a chain 1, and then again 3 double crochets in the next chain 1 space, chain 1 after that, and then repeat that another time, so we'll do it twice. Okay, again, the repetition is written the same as it was the previous row, where you come to a bracket and then you're repeating between the brackets across your entire length of your blanket. Because I have a shorter swatch, I'm already at the end, so it does say repeat until you come to the last 2 chain 1 spaces, and this is where I am. And so the end of this, it says ending with 3 double crochets in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, and 2 double crochets in the next chain 1 space. So I'll just be ending this pattern then with the 3 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets only in the last chain 1 space. And again, we'll be doing a chain 1 and turn. I'm just going to pull my loop out longer. All right, now that I've finished with my main color, row 2, I just turned my work, or flipped my work over. So I'm back again facing the same direction that I did when I began my first row of the main color. I'm going to begin the contrasting color on the same side. So I've just made a slip knot with my contrasting color. I'm going to join with a slip stitch around that first double crochet of row 1. So I didn't work into that chain 2 at the edge, I just joined around the double crochet. And then I'm going to work in the chain spaces between the 3 double crochet groups as I'm creating this layer of this contrasting color. I'm going to work initially 2 double crochets in that first chain, and then I'm going to join with a slip stitch in the center double crochet of the next 3 double crochet group. That replaces what normally would have been a chain 1 between the double crochet groups. Instead, we're doing a slip stitch. I'm going to repeat across now with 3 double crochets in the next chain between the foundation loops there on the foundation row. And then again, join with a slip stitch in the center double crochet of the next 3 double crochet group, and repeat that across now. Again, 3 double crochets in the next chain, slip stitch in the center double crochet, 3 double crochets in this chain here, okay, and then a joining slip stitch in that center double crochet. So as I've begun this pattern, according to the instructions, we had the join, we had 2 double crochets, a slip stitch join between, then we have 3 sets of the 3 double crochets and the slip stitch joins across there. Now we're coming up to the shell, and for the contrasting color shell, we're going to be working it in this space here between these groups of this shell here on row 1. We're going to work our shell in the same manner, 3 double crochets there in that space between those groups of the shell. Then we're going to be working a slip stitch around this chain 2 space of that shell, and then again putting 3 more double crochets back in that same space there at the base of that shell. Okay, and then again join with a slip stitch in the center of the next 3 double crochet group there, and then repeat the same process now as we're heading down toward this inverted shell. We're simply going to be working our 3 double crochets in the chain 1 spaces. We're going to be doing this twice on this section. Chain 1 in the center double crochet, three double crochets in this chain 1, a slip stitch join in this double crochet here, so you can see what that looks like now. Okay, and as I come up to the inverted shell, I'm just going to start another clip here to explain this more clearly, since this is a little bit more complicated to explain. So you can see how we've started. That's been pretty simple so far, and I'll just explain a little bit more clearly how we do this inverted contrasting color shell at this point. Okay, we've come to the place now where we are at the bracket in the pattern where it says contrasting color inverted shell. So this is the beginning of the bracketed repetition of the pattern, and it's telling us now to begin with working our contrasting color inverted shell. We're going to be working using these chains here at either side of the inverted shell of row 1. So this point here, we will not be working into that. We're simply going to be working in these shells, these chain 1s, sorry, at the sides here. So we're going to first start off by working our 3 double crochet together in this first chain And again, our 3 double crochet together, we had already done that on rows 1 and 2, so we know what that is. That's a decrease stitch. And then we're going to join with a slip stitch here between those 3 double crochets together of that inverted shell. And then we're going to again work our 3 double crochets together in this chain 1 here at this side. And complete that. I'll just do the joining slip stitch and then the center double crochet of the next group, so it just sort of secures it there, so you can see what that looks like. So that's your contrasting color inverted shell. And from here we're going to now continue with the same repetition that we did before. We're working the 3 double crochets in the chain 1 spaces and then the joins in the center double crochets. So we'll just repeat those stitches across here. Our 3 double crochets, our joining slip stitch. Now I would say that as you're getting this pattern established, the very first few rows are what are going to be the most tedious or difficult to begin with. I think once you get this established, you'll not only be familiar with the pattern, but it won't be as difficult to find where to place your stitches. You won't be working into any of those chain 1s anymore at the foundation. So it should become a little bit easier as you go forward. So you can see I've done my 3 sets of 3 double crochet and my joins. Again, I'm at the point of the shell now, so I'm going to again work my contrasting color shell at the base of that shell in between those groups of double crochet. So I've got my 3 double crochets and then the joining slip stitch around the chain 2 space at the top, and then again working back into that same space at the bottom, my 3 double crochets here, and then again the joining slip stitch. So that's my second shell completed, contrasting color shell. Again working down this side now. Let me just see if I can find that chain, that loop there. My 3 double crochets. Joining slip stitch here. And again, repeat that across. Looks like I misplaced that one. Okay, so do my 3 double crochets. So in the pattern again, remember the brackets will tell you where to begin again with the repetitions. So at this point in a longer row, you would be again working the inverted shell. But because I am at the end of my row here, I am going to work my last 3 double crochets in this chain here. And then my join. And then the pattern says here at the end that we are going to work 2 double crochets in the next chain 1 space here at the end. So 2 double crochets. And to finish the pattern, we're going to work a slip stitch around the post of the next double crochet. So we're simply going to do a joining slip stitch around that post to secure the end of our row. Okay, so that is the end of row 1 contrasting color. Okay, at the end of row 1 contrasting color, I just did a chain 1 and I pulled my loop out long so that it won't come undone. Now I've gone back to my main color, so I just inserted my hook into the loop and tightened it. And as the instructions will say, we are going to be working now with row 3 main color. And it just says to repeat row 2 main color. So I'm just going to look in the pattern and see what the instructions said for row 2 main color. And I'll just repeat that. So basically we're going to be working our 2 double crochets in the next chain 1 space. Chain 1, 3 double crochets here, chain 1. So again, just an exact repetition of what we did before and what I already filmed. So the nice thing about the main color rows is they're really easy and pretty quick to work and easy to memorize as well. So I'll just stitch a little bit further and then I will stop and go ahead and then show you the row 2 contrasting color, which is what we'll be doing next. So that's my shell. So I'll just continue and finish this row and I'll come back and show you what row 2 of the contrasting color looks like. All right, you can see I've finished row 3 of my main color. And now I'm ready to start row 2 of the contrasting color. So I'm just going to put my hook back into that contrasting color loop. Now I'm going to want to begin by moving my hook up to the next row, which was row 2 of the main color. I'm going to do that by just working a slip stitch around that double crochet. So not the chain 2 at the end, but the double crochet there at the inside. Just do a slip stitch there to move my hook to the next row. And I'm going to just spin my work around. So I'm basically working upside down or looking at it somewhat upside down. And that's the only thing about it that's a little bit complicated, is that you're looking at it backwards. But the actual stitches themselves are pretty much the same. So we're going to now work 2 double crochets to begin. We're going to be working into the slip stitches between the groups of stitches. So rather than working into a chain 1 space or working into a double crochet or something in the center, you're going to now be working into the slip stitches. So we're going to first of all start out this row with 2 double crochets in that first slip stitch. And then again we're going to anchor with a slip stitch in the center double crochet of the next 3 double crochet group of row 2. And repeat that across now, but working 3 double crochets in the next one. So 3 double crochets in the next slip stitch. And again anchoring with our slip stitch in the center double crochet. And repeat that now, 3 double crochets in the next slip stitch. And then anchor again with a slip stitch in the center double crochet there of row 2. And we are going to do another set of 3 double crochets here in this slip stitch. And then anchor with our slip stitch there in the center double crochet. Okay, so I'll show you what that looks like now. Lay it flat. So you can see we've had our 2 double crochets here, and we have our 3 sets of 3 double crochet up this side of the chevron. Now we're going to come to the position where we want to do our shell stitch again. So we're going to work our first 3 double crochets of the shell in this slip stitch here at the top. So that's the first half of the shell. And now we're going to do a slip stitch around the chain 2 space there between these sets of stitches. And then to finish the shell, again, we're going to go back and work 3 more double crochets in the same place there in that slip stitch at the bottom. Looks like that. And then again, a joining slip stitch in the next center double crochet there. So you can see what that looks like. And then continue in the same manner down this side, working the 3 double crochets in the slip stitches. And the joining slip stitch there. Another set of 3 double crochets here. And again, a joining slip stitch in this center double crochet here. It's just a matter of seeing where you are in the pattern and making sure you are working into the proper place. Okay, and then we're going to now work our inverted shell. We're going to be working in these 2 slip stitches here. So this center section is never worked at all. It's just worked into these 2 slip stitches here. So we're going to do our first 3 double crochet together in that first slip stitch. So that's our decrease stitch. And then we're going to do a joining slip stitch just in the center here, the center of the previous inverted shell there, and then do our second 3 double crochet together, decrease stitch there for the second half of that inverted shell. And then we're back again to just anchoring with a slip stitch into the center double crochet of the previous row, of row 2. And then repeat across again with the sets of 3 double crochets as we're working across our row back toward the next shell. And our anchoring slip stitch. Okay, we're back to working our next shell again in the slip stitch here at the top of that contrasting shell from row 1. Again, a joining slip stitch in the chain 2 space around that chain 2. Finish up the shell with the second set of 3 double crochets there in the same place. Anchoring slip stitch there. Again, I'll just lay that flat so you can see what that looks like. So after you get used to working these rows, it will be pretty easy to memorize, and you won't need to refer the pattern or hopefully to the video anymore once you get used to it. So okay, I'll just show you how to finish the row again. Just remember that the rows end with sets of 2 double crochet, and then the other ones are always sets of 3. Okay, so we've got our 3 there, our anchoring slip stitch here. And the last slip stitch at the end of the row, we're just going to work our 2 double crochets. And then to finish this row again, we're going to work a slip stitch join around that double crochet there at the end of row 2 of the main color. And again, pull the loop out so that it doesn't come undone. Okay, so that's the end of row 2 contrasting color. Hopefully that's clear. All right, I've completed my 4th row of main color, and I pulled my loop out long here at the edge. and I put my hook back into the contrasting color and tighten my loop. I'm just going to turn my work now. Okay, so I'm again going to be doing the same thing that I did last time on the contrasting color row. This was a little bit easier because you have sort of the right side facing you. You're not looking at it upside down anymore. So we're going to again skip the chain 2 at the edge and work a joining slip stitch around that double crochet just to move our hook up to the next row. And then we're going to be working our 3 double crochets in the slip stitches. Actually, this one at the edge here is first of all 2 double crochets. We always have 2 at the edge, but into the slip stitch there, and then join us with a slip stitch there in the center of that 3 double crochet group. Then again begin with our 3 double crochet groups in the slip stitches of the contrasting color, and then joining into the main color row. So I do think that this row is pretty simple to memorize after you've worked it a couple times, and again with it facing you, it's a lot easier to see it. The written pattern hopefully is accurate as well. I think in some ways it's almost easier to see the video in this for this particular pattern. It's a little bit complicated to describe it all because of the 2 layers, the 2 colors and everything. It might just get a bit wordy. It might be really hard to just understand from the written pattern, but hopefully with the video it'll make it clear. And so I have our shell here with a join in that chain 2 space at the top. I am working with DK weight yarn and a H hook, 5mm. So you can try this pattern with maybe a worsted weight, maybe a K hook or something. Depends on what kind of thickness you want, what kind of weight you want to your blanket. So you can kind of determine that. I'll just work here to show you again the inverted shell. So I'll work across to that point. So let's see, where are we now? We've got our 2 sets of 3 double crochets. Now we're at the point where we're going to want to work our inverted shell in the slip stitches here. So we're going to work our 3 double crochets together. There. And then again join with a slip stitch underneath the inverted shell of the main color row. Skip this here at the center, and then work our 3 double crochet together here at the opposite side to finish the second half of that inverted shell, which is our decrease there. And then again join So hopefully this goes pretty quickly once you get used to it and have it memorized. It's also a little bit more difficult to stitch it while you're trying to film yourself doing it. So hopefully it's not as complicated as maybe I'm making it look at times. So yeah, that's how row 3 of the contrasting colors worked. So maybe I'll just go ahead and work a few more rows and just show you again what it looks like, the fabric looks like as you've made a few more rows. As you can see now, I've finished a few more rows. So I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows of the main color and the contrasting color, 5 rows. So when you finish the pattern, you will end it just like this, where you basically have the layered row, the contrasting color row worked, and that'll be how you end the pattern. And you can see how we've got that foundation loops row and then the final row of the main color, so it gives it quite a nice edging at both sides. So I think it's turning out pretty nice. Hopefully this pattern is easy enough to follow, and of course the video makes it easier to understand, hopefully, too. So it does create a nice thickness. Again, I'm just using a DK weight yarn, so maybe if you're using something a little bit heavier, it might be even a heavier blanket, but it's quite neat. You can make this to any dimension. So obviously the foundation row, you can make it to any length and then work it until it's any width that you want. I'll just measure this quickly. So remember, we started with 16 foundation loops for my swatch, and with DK weight yarn and H hook, just my own gauge, which is quite an average gauge. My piece ended up being approximately 13.5 inches across, maybe 14 inches. So it gives you an idea. 16 loops was 14 inches across. So it gives you maybe some idea when you're starting out how wide your piece will be, depending on how long your foundation row is. So I hope you do enjoy this pattern. I hope you enjoy making this two-tone chevron granny stitch blanket.